In April 2014, an Indiegogo campaign swept the nation with promises of limitless energy and Star Trek-level technologies. It's been almost a decade since that campaign has ended. So whatever happened to Solar Freakin Roadways? SIMBIB. Hello folks, Happy New Year, welcome back to Stuff I Make Because I'm Bored. My name is Sin and I will be your host, and today I want to talk to you about Solar Roadways. I've made it no secret that I love technology and engineering, and I was part of the swept nation that was excited for the concept of this futuristic idea. The video from their Indiegogo campaign was funny, compelling, and to me sounded very reasonable and even achievable. A few weeks ago I was reminded of this campaign and I started to wonder, did they ever get their funding? Who was behind Solar Roadways anyways? And most importantly, is this project even feasible at all? Part 1. What is Solar Roadways? Solar Roadways is a company created in 2006 based in Ohio with a singular goal: to replace any walkable and drivable asphalt surfaces in America with hexagonal solar panels in order to generate electricity in places, quote, heretofore impossible in order to fight climate change. Their only product, also called Solar Roadways, are hexagonal solar panels that would not only generate electricity, oh no, these glass tiles would replace roads entirely and would have programmable LEDs that could light up roads at night, create reprogrammable parking lots and lane dividers, and even glow when there's obstacles on the road, such as Swoop, their moose mascot. But what about snow or ice, I hear you ask? These panels would come pre-installed with heating coils that could melt snow and ice in the winter, keeping roads clear and minimizing potential accidents. But wait, you say. They're solar panels. Isn't glass, like, notoriously not a good surface to drive on? Well, don't worry about that. Solar Freakin Roadways has you covered. Each hexagonal tile comes equipped with a rough textured surface to provide maximum grip for passing vehicles. The glass is even made of recycled material. These tiles are weight tested to be able to withstand 250,000 pounds. The maximum weight before being considered an overweight vehicle in Canada is about 9,500 kilos, or about 20,950 pounds. But what would happen if one of these tiles breaks? That's where their tile nature comes in handy, because these tiles are individually replaceable, removing the need to rip out entire roads for repaving, or for that black filler road paste asphalt gunk stuff that spiderwebs its way across every single walkable and drivable concrete and asphalt surface in my city, making it nearly untraversable. Imagine the possibilities of these programmable tiles. If a store had sales, they could advertise in the parking lot. Along highways, they could interactively change the direction lanes would go to help ease congestion. They could even warn drivers several kilometers ahead that there's some kind of obstacle on the road, such as fallen trees or meese. You know, mooses. And all the while, these tiles would generate electricity for free from the sun, paying for themselves and even supplying power back into the cities and neighborhoods that the panels would be installed in. It sounds amazing, right? I know I was ecstatic about it. What a cool idea, and so many problems solved in one fell swoop. Yes, that's where their mascot moose got their name from. But who could create such incredible tech? Part 2. Who created Solar Roadways? Solar Roadways was created by husband and wife team Julie and Scott Bursaw. Editor's note, it's Brusaw, not Bursaw. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it wrong for the rest of this video. Bye. Julie has a master's in counseling psychology, and she ran a private practice for 20 years before devoting her life to Solar Roadways as part of her spiritual mission. And Scott is an electrical engineer with over 30 years of experience in the industry, 12 of which were spent as the director of research and development at an Ohio manufacturing facility where he designed their product line. And let's be real, a lot of wild ideas that you hear about are often had by people who've got no idea what they're doing. And usually they've got no experience in the field that they're trying to break into. So hearing that one of the people behind Solar Roadways is an electrical engineer gives me hope that this project has at least, you know, a fighting chance. The idea of Solar Roadways came to Julie and Scott sometime before 2009 after they read An Inconvenient Truth, a book by former United States Vice President Al Gore that discusses the climate crisis. Julie had mentioned the possibility of roads being made of solar panels, an idea that was originally dismissed by her husband Scott, but just like me, the idea grabbed and fascinated Scott and he couldn't let it go. Eventually, the duo took their idea to their neighbor Pam Bird, who was the author of Inventing for Dummies, and whose company had advised inventors for years. And so, the ball started rolling. Julie and Scott founded Solar Roadways together and slowly gathered supporters for their ideas through blog posts, presentations, and even through meetings with senators, all of which is documented on the Our Journey page on their website. Part 3. Funding and Successes. In 2010, they built their first ever prototype, and they got just over $100,000 in funding from several sources throughout the year. In 2011, they got even more funding, $750,000 over 2 years to realize their product from the United States Department of Transportation, or US DOT. And they continued innovating their product and even laid the first solar-powered driveway on their property, where they could run tests to see how the product would behave in real-world situations. Through to 2013, the couple was convinced by friends and fans that they should do a crowdfunding campaign, and in 2014 they launched their famous Indiegogo campaign with a goal of $1 million. And with the help of volunteer Michael Nathan, who made the viral video,
Solar Freakin Roadways.
What are they?
They're Solar Freakin Roadways.
they ended up smashing their goal and raising $2.2 million. In 2016, they were contracted by the city of Sandpoint, Idaho, to install 30 panels in their town square. This was when they moved into their third phase of panels, on their website denoted as SR3, and while they did install all 30 panels in the town over the course of about 3 days, only 11 of them were actually working due to manufacturing difficulties since they were making them using their own equipment. But eventually, all 30 were installed, and it marked the first contracted installation of the product. And while the couple views this installation as a failure, it is noteworthy that they were able to do it at all, even if it took them 3 days to do so. I've seen roads take longer than that to install, so with some ironing out of the kinks, that's honestly still really good. Toward the end of 2018, they noticed that their real-world test sites, some of the cables were failing, so they reworked their product to the new SR4, and for the next several years, continued experiencing success after success. Around here, though, is where their website stops updating, midway through 2020. Like most companies, the pandemic hit them hard, and funding from grants were sparse. However, going to their crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo reveals that they continued updating there, though the last update there was in November 2022, 2 years later, discussing the deal that they were working out with the Army. They do mention on their site that they're working on an SR5, a newer update to their panel model, that would allow the panels to be mass-produced, which would drastically reduce their cost. Overall, it sounds like they're doing really good. An invention can't really change the world overnight, and while many airports and other companies are interested in working with Julie and Scott, they would need to see massive successes in places before being able to bring their product into the masses. But all of this information comes from their site. Of course they would want to speak positively about themselves, though they were very honest about their failure to meet their deadline for their first real-life installation. So what is it that others have said about Solar Roadways? Part 4. The Naysayers. While there's been much positive buzz about Solar Roadways, there's also been a lot of people that look at this project like it is doomed to fail. And looking at their arguments, I find it a little bit hard to disagree with them. But before we make any decisions, let's actually hear what the naysayers' arguments are, starting with the obvious. Solar panels are the most efficient when they directly face the sun. This is why solar farms have mobile panels that are angled toward the sun, and they move with the sun to catch the maximum amount of sunlight throughout the day to produce electricity. Solar panels on rooftops are also more efficient than a flat panel on the floor, since they're angled and can be placed on sections of the roof that have maximum sun exposure throughout the day. And while they're not as efficient as a solar farm, they have one more enormous leg up on flat panels. They're usually not obstructed by anything. There's no buildings in the way, or trees with leaves that would cover the roads, and more importantly, no cars or people that could temporarily block sunlight. And while a standard solar panel has just enough glass on the surface to protect the sun cells, Solar Roadways would need far thicker and textured glass to protect the panels from the friction of wheels and the weight of traffic, further reducing their efficiency as solar panels. Speaking of, I'm sure you've noticed, but most of the pictures that I've shown you so far of Solar Roadways are taken either inside or at night from a high angle, because the LEDs that they're using are not very bright and are simply not very visible during the day, especially when they're viewed at steep angles, like you would see if you were, driving. This is a problem even on traffic lights, which have caps over the top of the display screens to shield them from direct sunlight so that you can actually see which light is on. These caps on top of the lights on traffic lights also have the added benefit of shielding the traffic lights from dust and other falling debris like rain that could block visibility of the LEDs, which is another problem of using solar panels on roads. Furthermore, in order to see or even use the LEDs, they need to be very bright, creating a high power requirement which the solar panels just wouldn't be able to reliably provide, specifically the way they are built right now. And on top of that, the dust, dirt, and debris that would land on the road would cause additional wear to the glass, which would then transfer that wear to the wheels of the vehicles that would be driving on it. And the wear of the glass would further cause the glass to become opaque, reducing the effectiveness of the solar panels even more. And all this wear and tear would need constant maintenance, which would cost a huge amount of money, which honestly is the same for roads, granted, but it would be specialized, whereas a road is more generalized. And speaking of money, the biggest drawback to all of this is, the cost. To quote Sarah Marquardt for her article for Interesting Engineering, for the demonstration project in Sandpoint, Idaho, the panels had an installed capacity of 1.529 kilowatts with an installation cost of $48,734, which implies a cost per installed kilowatts of about $33,000, about 20 times higher than that of a solar power plant. But we can extrapolate from these numbers a bit more. I looked around and I found that the average cost of paving 1 lane mile of road in the northeast of America is about $2.67 million per lane mile. A lane mile, by the way, is the length of each individual lane of road if they were laid end to end. So for example, a 10-mile stretch of road with 2 lanes would be 20 lane miles. Based on the previous number of $48,734 to install 13.9 meters squared of panels, let's do a little bit of math to find out the cost for 1 lane mile. First, we have to convert from the superior metric system to the confusing imperial one since I couldn't find the cost of kilometers. So 13.9 meters squared equals 149.62 square feet. A road is between 9 and 12 feet wide, so let's average that out to about 10.5 feet. If 149.62 is the total surface area of a square and the square is 10.5 feet wide, then it would be 149.62 divided by 10.5 feet equals 14.2494 feet long. It would cost $48,734 to make 14.25 feet of lane road. There's 5,280 feet in a mile, making their cost for 1 lane mile of solar roadways $18,058,031.50 per lane mile, compared to a standard road, which, again, $2.67 million per lane mile, making solar roadways 6.79 times as expensive to install as a standard road, with some big caveats. These numbers are extrapolated from Solar Roadways product version 3, which is not mass-produced. And I also don't know how the $48,734 cost breaks down into labor, integration into the electrical grid, if there's maintenance included, if they had to prepare the road surface or add any foundation, their transport and material costs, and a bunch of other factors that I do know were included in the $2.76 million average figure that I found for a standard road lane mile cost. If the panels are mass-produced, it would be highly likely that it would drastically lower the cost of creating these roads. But even then, it's unlikely that they would cost less than a standard road. Once they are mass manufactured, it would be worth looking at whether a solar roadway is feasible and if the extra cost is worth installing it. But we're not there yet, and we really don't have any real-world examples of a road like this that has been tested. Or do we? Part 5, the opposition. In 2016, France unveiled a 1-kilometer-long solar road created using wattway technology. But by 2018, the road showed major signs of damage, 90 meters of it needed to be replaced, the road was incredibly noisy, and the one promise that it had made, to provide power to nearby street lamps, was never even realized. Wattway even admitted that the road was a failure and they would not be continuing this project. Which brings up another interesting point. Asphalt is specifically designed for tires to pass over it quietly. Glass does not have the same feature, making solar roadways probably extremely noisy to drive over. In 2023, Wattway unveiled new solar cycling lanes in the Netherlands, because of course it's bike paths. Why are we surprised? These solar panels were installed over top of existing roads, essentially as solar panel patches, and it will be monitored for the next 5 years to see how they hold up. In late 2017, China opened up a 1-kilometer-long solar roadway in Jinan. The road is said to be able to produce enough energy to power 800 homes in 1 year, and is 2 lanes plus an emergency lane wide. While I can't find any information on how it's doing right now, the road seems to be holding up alright, though it only produced 96 megawatts in its first 14 weeks of operation, or about 357 megawatts per year, which is a far cry from the 1,000 megawatts it was supposed to generate. That said, all of these other projects are just solar panels.
panels. They don't have Solar Roadways' LED system, and none of them use a textured glass surface like Solar Roadways does.
Wattway in particular seems to be Solar Roadways' biggest competitor, though where Solar Roadways aims to create complete roads out of solar panels, Wattway is creating solar panels that are glued onto pre-existing surfaces, which would vastly minimize the need for
total infrastructure overhaul.
And when it comes to electric roads, there are some other interesting leaps made. Stellantis, a Dutch company that owns Jeep, Ram, Chrysler, etc., created a 0.65-mile-long test track with electromagnetic coils buried just under the asphalt. This powered coil was capable of charging electric vehicles as they drove over them, which would in theory eliminate the need to stop and charge your vehicles. Part 6. Closing thoughts. So putting all this together, I'm really happy that a project like Solar Roadways exists. Or more specifically, I'm happy that people like Julie and Scott Bursaw exist, who are willing to throw caution to the wind and create something that they believe will be amazing that can change the world for the better.
And while they have seen some huge successes, and I am interested to see where they go to from here,
a part of me also wonders if it's worth it for them to continue going down this specific path at all. Based on the performance of the 2016 road in France and this 2017 road in China, as well as, basic physics, a solar road simply cannot generate as much energy as a solar farm of the same size could, at least not with the way that the tech is right now. Then the problem of adding in the LED smart system that would simply require far too much power and is currently hardly visible in daylight just seems like a waste of time and energy to me. And finally, the added difficulties of providing a safe, drivable surface, the maintenance it would need, and the sheer expense of even creating and installing these roads in the first place. To me, it just seems smarter to install solar panels along the roads instead of replacing roads entirely, or even using all of this goodwill that they've generated and all of this hype around their brand in creating cost-effective solar panels that you could put on the roofs of buildings.
Which brings me back to Solar Roadways' claim from the beginning of the video. According to them, Solar Roadways is able to install solar panels in areas, quote, heretofore impossible, unquote.
Why is installing a traditional solar panel more difficult than a brand new road system? Or what would prevent installing a traditional solar panel from being installed in areas where roads already exist? You could just as easily create a sloped roof on top of existing roads that has solar panels added on top.
I looked up a reference image for this video and hey look, it already exists in Germany and Austria.
Having them be angled towards the sun or towards an area of the day where the sun is most consistently hitting them would in theory provide even more energy than having the panels be flat on the ground like they would be on a road. They'd also be less obstructed by traffic and so be in less shade, other debris would more easily slide off, and in fact, a cover for the road would prevent snow from getting on the road at all, thus eliminating the need for the heated coil system. I don't know.
I want for them to succeed, but with all the millions of dollars invested in them at this point, I wonder when we'll hit the tipping point of the sunk cost fallacy, and they'll put that great energy and drive towards something more possible. According to the laws of physics.
Have you ever heard of Solar Roadways? What are your thoughts on solar roads in general? What are some environmental projects that you've heard of? What are some projects that you've heard of that you were like, that makes absolutely no sense. How does this have $1 million in backer funding? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for spending some time with me. Leave a like and subscribe if you see more videos like this in the future. I post videos every Tuesday at noon Eastern. If you want to hear from me more often, you can follow me on all my social medias. You can find the @ here and in the description. But that's all from me today, folks. I'll see you in the next video. Bye! SIMBIB, stuff I make because I'm bored.
Solar Freakin Roadway!